gonna. That's right. So we want to talk today about the Passover Haggadah, because my dear friend here, Hillel, always needs Divrei Torah to share with people, and it's such a glorious night. The Shekhinah comes to our houses on the night of Pesach. So we know that in the most longest part and the highlight of the Passover Seder is Magid. And there, Rabban Gamliel teaches us, he says, Kol mi shelo amar shlosha dvarim eno yotze. If a person doesn't talk about these three concepts on the night of Pesach, he hasn't fulfilled his obligation. What are they? Pesach, Matzah, Maror. So the holy Zera Shimshon, Zechuto Yagen Aleinu, he asks a very, very important question that all the commentators ask. And if you actually look in the Seder, right? Kadesh Urchas Karpas Yachas, Magid Rochsam Mosi Matzah, Maror Korech. Shulchan Orech. It says, the question is, why, when Rabban Gamliel presents these three ideas, he should put Maror first. He should say Maror Pesach Matzah. Because chronologically, what happened to us in Egypt, right? We had a bitter life. Then we ate the Passover meal. Then we got free, matzah, right? So it should be Maror Pesach Matzah.
In sequence.
Right, but he says, the Rabban Gamliel, when he quotes it, he says, Pesach Matzah Maror. You end with Maror. Why end with bitterness? Right? So many of the commentaries ask this thing. We always want to end off on a good note. Why on the Rabban Gamliel, when he teaches us about these three things, right? Because when we left Egypt, how was it? It was first very bitter, like maror, the bitter herbs. We Sephardim, our minhag is we have the Ashkenazim have like horseradish, but we have
charoset,
romaine lettuce. So the question is, why is it out of sequence? So he says a beautiful answer, which I really, really believe in. He said that Al Pi Kabbalah, you have to know that the night of Passover, we Jews were essentially at our core still idol worshippers. If you fast forward to the seventh day of Pesach, the sea wasn't opening, because the angel of the sea told God, why should these people be drowned and these people live? Halalu avdei zara, halalu avdei zara. Only when it split, they said, Ze Eli v'anvehu, vayaminu b'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdo. Right? It says in the Torah, when does it say that they actually really believed in God? Only after this
splitting of the sea.
They said, Ze Eli v'anvehu, and then in the Torah says, vayaminu b'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdo. So he says like this, he says that there's this very deep concept that I can't really get into with you, the concept of mochin, which is the same thing like we said before, chachma bin adat, which is keter, and it's very deep things. But you have to understand, Kabbalistically, what happened on the night of Pesach, the holy Zera Shimshon tells us, is that God kind of gave us a lightning rod of holiness on the day of Pesach. He kind of gave us an injection of B12. He put us, and he made us from totally darkness to light. But he said, Hashem had to do that. Hashem had to turn on the switch, you know. It wasn't like it says in the Zohar, iteruta letata. It wasn't that we self-developed our character and we worked hard on ourselves to become a man and become godly and become a servant of God and become noble and angelic, right? Hashem all of a sudden turned on the lights and he sparked us, zapped us with holiness. And unfortunately, you see right after we came out, they started keep on complaining. They kept on saying, yeah, exactly. They said, we miss Egypt. So that the night of Pesach was a magical night. It wasn't because we had worked on ourselves. It was just because Hashem gave it to us on a silver platter. He injected in us with an immense amount of holiness. But like it says in the Zohar, it took 7 weeks
to earn that.
To merit even to come in front of Har Sinai to get the Torah. So he says the lesson, what the Pesach Seder is teaching us, why we end off with Maror, is that V'hoyel shenitvat hashibut chazor lemkoim ha'af achar cheres acher amar magid matzah kodem l'maror. He says what happened there was actually wrong. You're mistaken. At the end, the lesson what it's trying to teach you is a very, very deep lesson. Rav Sadok talks about a similar idea. And then I saw something beautiful from the Arizal on this also. He says, even though they got freed physically, mentally, they still had the ideology and the mentality of a slave. That's why it was still bitter. Because what it's trying to teach you is something very important. Unless you work on yourself and you put blood, sweat, and tears, like Rav Yisrael Salanter said, to change one midah, to change one bad habit of like being jealous or lazy or egotistic or angry is harder than learning all of Shas. So since the Jews at this point, the night of the Seder, everything was a gift to them, so unfortunately they went back to their old selves, as we see. And that's what Rav Sadok says. He says basically that the lesson of Egypt is a very common lesson. That whenever you want to run away, like if, let's say, God forbid, a gang of your friends want to go and go to a nightclub or go to somewhere non-kosher, just like from Egypt, you need to run away from an evil crowd. But how long did it take for the Jews before they came into the Holy Land? The Holy Land, Israel, is like Olam Haba. 40 years!
40 years, not all of them didn't make it.
And 99% of them didn't make it.
Minorities made it.
He says, and even to get to the Mount of Sinai, it took them 49 days. It says this is a lesson in life. Greatness cannot be achieved overnight. You need to build yourself up. And that's what the Zera Shimshon is teaching us. That easy come, easy go. Yes, the night of Pesach we became free. But that was only a momentary spark of greatness. Since they didn't work on themselves, they reverted back to their bitter ways. And you see that's this sourpuss mode of always complaining to God. Only after 40 years they became a metamorphosis. They changed and transformation happened. So it wants to teach you something amazing. And I saw something amazing from the star student of the Arizal, perhaps the second greatest student after Rav Chaim Vital. His name was Rav Meir Paparish. He writes in the Hilchas Talmud Torah of the Ari that he wrote based on what the Arizal taught him. He says the Shorish Kenyat Kol Midot Tovot, the source of all good, of greatness, of getting all the good attributes, like to be humble and patient and.
But the good midot.
He says hitbodedut is to spend time with yourself. To know thyself. Which means some people are afraid to spend 2 seconds with each other. Some people, they travel the entire world, but they don't travel inside themselves. Who am I? Why am I? What are my weak points? How do I become better, right? So he's saying something amazing from the Arizal. He says, the golden crown of how you could become great is to look inside yourself. Nobody's around. Go on a hike. Be alone. Exactly.
Introspection.
So that's what exactly what the Zera Shimshon is saying. He's saying as great as the night it was in Pesach, they didn't put any blood, sweat, and tears and self-development and hard work in it. And you see, that's why constantly throughout the Midbar, they failed their test. They didn't have any imunah bitachon because Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam shenev shemer b'naich. Rav Wolbe says it's not a coincidence. Rabbis are considered contractors, builders, because in order for something to be meaningful in life, you have to do zahmat. You have to work on yourself.
Endeavor.
You have to work on yourself. You have to develop yourself. That's why, like, remember for 3-4 years we were learning the Misat Yesharim? Yeah. It's a whole ladder. It's a whole system. So that's why it's teaching us in the Pesach Seder. That yes, everything was great. Hashem turned on this switch. He injected us with a tremendous mega voltage of holiness and we became free and we left Egypt. But since in the end of the day, it wasn't something that was self-improvement and self-development, and there was no hard work on our part put into it, we reverted to our own bitter ways of being ungrateful and all those bad things. So from here we learn a very important thing, that a person has to be patient, a person has to know himself, and a person has to realize that to become a very holy and angelic and noble person, you really, really have to put the work in. And since the Jews didn't put it, Hashem is saying, as long as you don't put in the work yourself, maybe you will have a temporary freedom. But at the end, you're going to end up what? With Maror.
Maror.
No shortcuts.
So there's no shortcuts to greatness. Hashem should always help us to be from the B'nai Aliyah, being from the B'nai Musar, from being from the B'nai. And like I said, that's why I fell in love with even though as much as I love the Mesilas Yesharim, I skipped it for a while. We're going to do it against Ramban, because Rabban Tzaddik is the Mashkiach of our generation, and he brought something. First of all, last time you weren't here, he said regarding the Igeres Ramban, the Ramban says you should read it once a week, but he says for our generation,
Rambam or Rambam?
Ramban, what we were learning
Rambam.
in the beginning. He said in order for us to get the proper effect, that he wrote almost 1,000 years ago. For our generation, you need to learn it every day in order to master humility. You understand? Or the Kilas Yaakov would tell him, the person that misses Musar for one day, consistency, you understand? Consistency creates greatness. Not just 1 second God injects you with holiness and you become like angelic, but the next day you're going to fall. And we see that throughout the Torah. So Hashem should help us to put in the hard work. Daf Yomi, Musar Yomi, Rambam Yomi, self-improvement Yomi. And in that way we will become great. And our greatness will be truly on a rock-solid foundation based on the Mesilas Yesharim, the Derech, Amen, song.
Amen.